Howdy folks, and welcome back to the channel. Today we will be discussing the steps necessary to becoming an active listener. As a professional private investigator, being an active listener is a must in almost every part of your everyday work life. Let's look at the areas of a private investigations business where active listening is required. First and foremost, let's start with training events. That is right. Even when you are watching private investigator training videos here on the PI Guide channel, you must be an active listener if you're going to realize the entire potential value. Sure, you can start the video, check your emails, send some text messages, write up some notes, and skip around through the video chapters to see if you can quickly get what you want out of the video. But does that really provide value to you? Now, I am not just asking this because I think you should watch my videos entirely and to the end and give it your utmost attention. I am saying this because I know firsthand how important active listening during training is, or better put, how inactive listening is detrimental to what you are learning. Let me give you a really good example from my early days as a private investigator where my active listening skills proved to be career-changing for me. My early days as a PI consisted mostly of getting up every single morning, grabbing a cup of coffee, grabbing my surveillance gear, and running out the door to conduct surveillance. After my day of surveillance was done, I headed back to the office only to realize that I now had several more hours of work to complete in writing up my reports, editing my videos, sending client updates, answering voicemails, answering emails, and all that other fun stuff. And after doing this for several years, day in and day out, working 6 or 7 days a week of surveillance, I decided it was time for me to see if there were perhaps other avenues of investigations that I could move into. I then discovered the PPIAC, Professional Private Investigators Association of Colorado. I started attending some of their monthly meetings and training events, and I attended one of their annual conferences. At that conference, I attended an excellent presentation on conducting accident investigations. Through my active listening during that course, I learned the differing levels of accident investigations, and I also learned that I, with just a little bit of experience that I had, could offer some of those more basic types of services. I took note after note after note, and I wrote down all the things I thought I could do, and I made a list of all the equipment I might need to purchase in order to add accident investigations to my portfolio of investigative offerings. And lo and behold, my first phone call that following Monday morning was from a large national firm who asked me about conducting an accident investigation for them. I told them what I could do for them based on my recent training, and they hired me right then and there. Now, this was totally coincidental that they called right after my training, but that training prepared me for that phone call and made it possible for me to get that client. And that client is still a client to this day. But there's always a flip side to the coin, isn't there? Here is an example of my inactive listening skills being applied just a year prior to that. That prior year, I had heard about the PPIAC's annual conference, and there was a pre-conference speaker the entire day prior who was speaking on how to build your PI business. I looked at the conference many times over for several months. I talked to several people at the PPIAC and other investigators around the country. They all told me if I wanted to learn how to grow and run my PI business, this was the event I needed to attend. But I didn't heed their advice. I decided that I could struggle through, push my way, and get the same results on my own. And I did fare okay for the most part. But a year or two later, I saw that same PI training being offered as a semi-private instructional event at a much higher price and in another state. After pondering and prayerful thought, I decided to attend it. It cost me a lot more for the class when I took it than what PPIAC had offered. And I had to travel clear across the country to attend, which means I had airfare and hotel and rental cars and other travel expenses. All in all, I spent well over $1,000 and several days of my time to get the same training I could have gotten right here in my backyard at a fraction of the price. Now, that training was invaluable to me. You see, before I went to that training, I had learned the importance of active listening. And boy, was I ever active in listening, folks. I took note after note after note during that training, and I still have that notepad sitting on my desk with my notes and my goals from way back then written down to remind me of what I learned early on in my PI career. And that one training was the one biggest game changer for me as a professional private investigator. Lesson learned from that one, folks. Had I taken that course the first time, I not only would have saved a ton of money, I would have jump-started my PI business years sooner. What other areas besides training does a PI need to be an active listener? Let's take a look. How about sales? You better believe it. If you're going to be successful in sales, you need to be a successful active listener too. And believe me, if you can't sell, you won't be in this business for long, except as an employee or subcontractor, which there is nothing wrong with if you are subcontracting or a direct hire and you enjoy it. But most PIs out there are entrepreneurial in spirit and are chasing the work day in and day out, and sales are a vital part of their success. We also need to be an active listener if we are doing interviews as part of our investigations. This includes just simple door knocks, neighborhood canvasses, or formal interviews being conducted with witnesses. Inactive listening in these situations won't just cost you some money savings, they could cost your client the highest prices of their life. If you work criminal matters, then your client's life or livelihood is on line. If you're working domestic and other civil cases, then your client's family life or career could be at stake. The first part of active listening often starts again with the client, not just in conducting the sale and closing the deal, but in gathering all of the information you can from the client. Once I have accepted a case, the first person I often will interview is the clients themselves. I have them fill out an intake form, and then I use that information to formulate my initial interview with the client. And trust me, making sure I am an active listener during that process is vitally important if the investigation is going to have a successful outcome. Now, we should all be on board with the fact that being an active listener is vitally important to a private investigator today. But what are the skills needed to be an active listener? Let's go over each one of those in detail right now. First is important, if you're having a face-to-face conversation, to always keep your eyes on the other person. But if you are staring into someone's eyes too much, it can be a little creepy and scary. You need to adjust this as necessary for the situation you're in. Make sure you look away from the person that you're speaking to from time to time, but you want to ensure you're still displaying interest and show that you're paying attention. You can look at one eye for a few seconds, then you might look over to the other eye for a few seconds, and then look at the mouth for a few seconds. When you do have to look away, you should always look to the side or up instead of down. Looking down can make it look like you want to end the conversation, which is not what we want to do. It is also a good idea to check your posture and make sure it is open. Closed or defensive looks can be made by crossing your arms or legs. You don't want to do that. You might also try tilting your head slightly in order to show that you are truly listening. Then there is the art of listening to the non-verbal clues the person is giving. This includes things like facial expressions, which can tell you a lot about what the person is saying. Are they smiling or frowning? Are their arms or legs crossed? Are they rubbing their eyes as if they are tired? Or are they looking at their phone or their watch as if they are disinterested? Make sure you also never interrupt the person you are talking to either. I don't mean to pick on anyone, but I see this a lot, especially with police interviews, where the officer keeps asking questions during a person's interview. Interruptions can give the impression that you think your thoughts are more important than theirs. As well, it can lead to them forgetting things or losing their train of thought. Save your questions for the end when it is your turn to speak. Then when you do ask questions, turn your active listener mode back on. Also, make sure you are listening without judgment or jumping to any conclusions. It's so easy to be listening to someone, then they start to say what they did wrong, and the interviewer gets that disgusted look on their face. This immediately tells the person you are talking to that you have now judged them, and the remainder of the conversation will probably yield less than desirable results. A perfect example of a great active listener in interviews would be the experienced criminal investigator. I have seen many interviews with defendants in some pretty horrendous cases where the defendant started confessing to his crimes and the interviewer was able to maintain that unbiased, non-judgmental appearance and even at times seem sympathetic to the defendant. This allows them to let the person continue telling their side of the story without feeling they will be condemned on the spot. This leads to the next tip. Don't plan your speech ahead of time. Just listen, folks. You will have time to speak. If you are making your rebuttal up in your mind, building the questions you need answers to, this will show the other person that you really are not interested in what they have to say. This goes along with showing signs that you are listening, nodding your head, saying things like, okay, yeah, These show the other person you are still with them and actively listening. Don't be looking at your watch, fumbling with your fingers, checking your phone, looking around, and things like that. You also have to make sure you do not impose your opinion on the person speaking while they are speaking. Sometimes you need to just lend a listening ear. Let them say everything they need to say. Then when it is your turn to speak, you can do so as an informed investigator. Staying focused is one of the hardest parts of active listening for most people. In our normal day-to-day conversations, we often bounce from topic to topic to topic. Then we are like, how did we get here? But you need to stay focused on the intent of the conversation. I often will repeat their words in my own mind, not out loud, to help me remember what they just said and to keep me focused. Then when it is your turn, you get to ask the questions, but keep your questions simple and concise. I always use phrases such as, to help ensure I understand this correctly, can you explain? Or I am not sure I understood this part, can you clarify? You should also avoid closed-ended questions and only ask open-ended questions. A closed-end question is one that is simply answered yes or no, where an open-ended question will invite more dialogue with the person you are speaking with. And the absolute most important thing, in my humble opinion, to being an active listener is paraphrasing and reflecting. I will often rephrase what I heard from the other person to first show I was listening, and second, to ensure I fully understood what I heard and that my notes are correct. I use paraphrases like, it sounds to me like, or if I understand this correctly. And remember, in every step of the conversation, whether it is a written interview, a client intake, a door knock, or whatever, once the other person starts talking, your active listener mode gets reactivated. And what about notes, you ask? Great question. I am so glad you stuck it out to this point to get the answer. I take minimal notes usually. I kind of have my own form of shorthand, if you will. I will jot down 1 or 2 words and a question mark or an exclamation mark or something to help me remember. I will take time minimally when the person speaking is shifting gears a little, but I try not to interrupt. I also always try to end the conversation with the expectation that I may be contacting them for a follow-up in case I have questions. And immediately after, I try to find a quiet moment to jot down all the highly important bullets of the conversation. I want to really quick give a shout out to Eric Hutchinson for his 5 months as a PI Guy Premium supporter. Thank you so much, Eric. I really do appreciate it. And I want to give a personal thanks to Ivan Weich for his dedicated support as a PI Guy Supporter Plus member. And a huge thank you to all of the other PI Guy supporters out there. I do appreciate it. If you would like more information on becoming a PI Guy member, I will leave a link down below for you to see what great perks are available and the different member levels. As many of you know, when I started out as a PI, I was green. I was as green as grass on a cool summer day, folks. I didn't know anything about being a private investigator. And I made this video where I reveal some of the rookie mistakes I made way back then.